Beginning now, we're going to discuss some SOLIDWORKS best practices, specifically in this case, computer hardware. So a little bit about me. My name is Ben Modic. I've been working with GoEngineer since 2015, and this is my third installment of SOLIDWORKS best practice webinars. So if you're coming back, thanks for participating in those other ones. So really the question here is more better. What we're going to talk about is kind of the things that we see the most as far as tech support goes. And that's kind of the department I'm in primarily. So the things that I see quite a lot and that I would like to share with you as far as being beneficial in terms of SOLIDWORKS. Okay. All right, just really quick before we get going, obviously, just our mission here, we strive to be experts in all things that we sell, including SOLIDWORKS. So we have quite a bit of knowledge. We have quite a bit of people working here that can assist you. So some of the areas, really just tech support alone, we have 30 or so people that if you call in for support, we can give you immediate assistance. We also do online training, right? So some of you might have already done that. And last, we do have a full 3D printing lab, and we can print you parts if you need to. All right. So the things that I want to discuss in the next 25-ish, maybe 30 minutes here, and leaving hopefully some time at the end, like I said, for questions. I hope we can get them all answered. The first thing, just how to get support. Like I mentioned, that's kind of our first, the first thing you should do if you're really struggling with something, or if you're getting errors, messages, warnings, crashings, things like that. You want to reach out to us, and we can give you a hand right away. Okay. Secondly, we're going to talk about hardware recommendations. So kind of just the general things that we always recommend, the things that we see day to day that work best. That help to solve any technical support issues that we run into. Certified graphics cards and drivers, obviously that's a huge player when it comes to the performance, crashing in SOLIDWORKS. It's kind of the first thing that we usually recommend that we'll look into, so kind of some things to look out for there. And then finally, we're going to talk about both Windows, some of the Windows settings that we can look at, that we can adjust, and some SOLIDWORKS settings. Now that last one is pretty a pretty big topic by itself, and we've already done some other webinars as far as large assembly, drawing question, or things that relate to those areas. But we'll discuss them a little bit. But I implore you to check out those other webinars that we have. So we'll get into that. Let me make sure. Sorry about that. So here are the 5 things. I apologize for that. Just trying to make sure PowerPoint skills are working here. All right. So those are the 5 items. All right. So how to get support? Like I said, those are kind of the main areas that we'll look at, that will help you out with. If you have questions about how do I do something, or help me do something, or do this for me, we do have a team for that, our training team, our application engineers. But by far, if you want to reach out for that immediate support, these are some of the ways you can contact us. You can email us, support@goengineer.com, if you want to send us, for example, in this case, maybe your system information file and kind of a routine or a procedure that causes a certain behavior in the program that you're not expecting. You can always call us as well. Our wait times are really pretty short, so we're there to help out. All right. Now, hardware recommendations. This one is, again, some of our basic suggestions here that I'm constantly relaying to people and making sure that their computers are up to spec. Some of the really basic stuff here, just to start off. Your processor should be able to achieve, the speed should be able to achieve 3.3 gigahertz. That's kind of most modern day processors have the ability to go above that. But just watch out if you're. This is kind of the main thing that we that we could see issues with. The one thing also to note here is, as far as your processor goes, speed is one thing, but the amount of cores, that's one other question I get. How many cores is best? How many cores do I need? SOLIDWORKS is a single core application, so it's not going to benefit from having crazy amount, 10, 12, whatever, how many cores you have. And it's also not going to really benefit from hyper-threading or splitting your cores. So sometimes we just recommend turning hyper-threading off in your BIOS, not splurging for the CPU that has a ton of cores and lower speeds, but rather getting a CPU with a higher speed. Okay. Your computer should be, solid state. The hard drive should be solid state. That's pretty standard nowadays. I think I'm still on a laptop here that has a regular disk drive, but most computers, as far as opening, loading files, solid state is going to be ideal. Third here is your RAM. Okay, so at the very minimum, kind of the median, intermediate computer is going to have 16 gigabytes. On the lower end, you might have 8. That might be okay for just some very low-level stuff. So 16 tends to be our minimum requirement, or recommendation rather. 32, 64, however you want to go. You can always obviously monitor your system memory while you're using the program, using the task manager. So you can monitor those things and check that out, see if you need more. So that's a pretty easy one, and it's not super expensive nowadays to add more RAM. And last, and I would say the most important, SOLIDWORKS, it's a very graphical heavy software. I'm sure you're all familiar with the GPU. It really should be one that we test, we certify, and then that SOLIDWORKS recommends. This is going to be your NVIDIA Quadros, your some AMD Radeon Pro, and even your RTX, the new RTX lines that are coming out from NVIDIA. Those are typically going to be most suited for SOLIDWORKS, and there's a website that we can check out. We can find the certified driver, which we're going to get into more detail as well. So running the correct driver that we test for that version of SOLIDWORKS that you're running is going to, it could drastically change your performance with the same GPU. And then last thing here, we have a couple machines in kind of our page where we detail all of this as well. We have some computers picked out on this website here. The kind of good, better, and best systems. Typically with SOLIDWORKS, whether you're working with a laptop, obviously the laptop's going to be a little bit more money. The price range is kind of around $2,000 ish for a really decent computer, and obviously the sky is pretty much the limit. So the question of this webinar, is more better for hardware for your computer? The answer is, well, obviously more is better, but really what you're doing, it's related to your specific applications. So again, you can monitor these things. Make that determination. We can help you, but in general, we need to make sure that we're at least running the base, items that we really need to have, the core hardware that we should be running, and that is going to solve the most issues that we run across on our technical support team. So those are kind of the main things that we can help out with, that you should be focused on if you're picking a new computer, or if you're trying to improve the performance of your current computer. These are kind of the main points. On that same note, some of our suggestions for simulation. So kind of just to add to that previous slide, obviously a faster CPU is better. That's the case, SOLIDWORKS with simulation, with most things when it comes to computers. Obviously there's a certain limitation that we're still at when it comes to computer speeds. Hopefully in the future, 5-10 years, it's going to be a different ball game. That's obviously the natural progression. So 4 to 6 cores is ideal for simulation. Some solvers only use 1 core, again, just like SolidWorks. So don't have to go all out on the number of cores. So NVMe, or non-volatile memory express solid state drives, are significantly faster than just normal SSDs. So if you're just running SolidWorks, a normal SSD is going to be completely fine. The new series of when we're talking about RAM here is the NVMe, and that requires a special motherboard in order to run that type of drive. So it requires a M.2 slot on your motherboard. So that's just something that's coming into more popularity nowadays. Again, with RAM, 16 is kind of a really good intermediate system. 32 is you're much better off with simulation. It doesn't use a ton of RAM, but I've noticed 32 is kind of a good base to start for most simulations. If you're running some really high level stuff, then you might want to choose 64 or even more. Okay, and then lastly, simulation doesn't use the GPU, but in order for the program to run correctly, if you have a simulation computer, and you're only using it for simulation, you still want SolidWorks to run on that computer. So you want to have a certified GPU. All right, let me make sure we got, And again, if you have any questions, I know I'm kind of just running through here. If you have any questions at all, just shoot them in the questions section, and we can talk about those. All right. Certified hardware, like I mentioned, there is a list of computers, not only computers, but they also go into the GPUs, the certified video card drivers that you should be running for the version of SolidWorks. That's the website there. It's fairly intuitive to use. There's really only a couple drivers that might be listed for different versions of SolidWorks, and you just want to make sure we're running one of those. So this is kind of the majority of our cases, right? When customers are not using the correct driver, might experience crashings, things like that. So this might be the first thing we'd recommend or suggest, or really request to know the information is what driver you're currently running, what version of SolidWorks you're running. Primarily, when we're talking about certified hardware for GPUs, there's 3 main models that SolidWorks tests. Okay, so from NVIDIA and AMD, we have the Quadro, the new RTX series, and from AMD, we have the Radeon Pro W and WX series video cards. Those are going to be the primary ones that we would really want to see that we can help out with. Do you need, again, going back to the core question here of this webinar, do we need like a RTX, A6000? I think the last time I checked on that, it was like $6,500. Well, if you are really running super large assemblies that we're having to load all those resolved, and we're rotating and zooming. Typically with SolidWorks, the GPU is most often utilized with rotate functions. So 99% of people using SolidWorks do not need a $6,500 graphics card, but we want to make sure that the program can obviously optimize everything and it's running the correct, or at least a supported video card and driver. The question I get, or we see a lot, is I'm running an NVIDIA GeForce card or like another gaming card, and maybe you're running it on like an Alienware laptop or something like that. And really the main reason for this is, obviously those cards are specifically designed for gaming applications, and the firmware just isn't optimized for the it isn't optimized for the OpenGL system. So it's just not set up the same. They're not built the same. All right. The obviously, run recommended driver. Like I said, we're going to be checking that if we're having issues. If you're calling us or if you're sending an email. Also, a quick note here on the last bullet point. There's a new option in SOLIDWORKS 2020 and 2021 that you may not be aware of. That is the enhanced graphics option. It was beta in 2019, but we've noticed that if you're again not running the supported graphics card, or if you're not on the correct driver, it's really ideal to turn that off, which it can cause quite a few different issues that we've seen. If you're seeing some issues in SOLIDWORKS that are obviously graphic related, something doesn't look right, it's kind of the main starting thing that we look at is your video card. So if you're obviously not on a computer that's not certified, that's okay. I would strongly recommend turning that option off. You can find that in Tools, Options, Performance. Okay. After you turn it off, you'll have to restart your computer for those changes to take effect, and then try to reproduce that the same error or the same crash. And if you're still having issues at that point, definitely let us know, and we can start troubleshooting that further. Okay, and the last, just another thought on GeForce cards. If you're running a computer that has obviously an unsupported card, but it was working at one point in time, and then something happened, and now it doesn't, perhaps like a Windows updated your video card driver, you might be able to resolve that problem by installing a new driver or rolling it back to a previous driver that worked at one point. Okay. All right. Kind of beating the same horse here. We're going to obviously run the correct driver. So a couple things about installing the driver or ways of verifying the driver that you're running. There's 3 different ways. We can just go through SOLIDWORKS RX and click Diagnostics to find that. We can go through Windows System Information, click Display. It will show us our driver as well. Or we can go straight into the control panel, the NVIDIA or AMD control panel, and find the driver there. So if you're on the website that is linked there at the top, and obviously it's telling you should be running the driver, you can just verify the one that you're running through these 3 different methods. If your driver, if the driver that I recommend is failing to install, first off, make sure that driver that you're running or trying to install is supported by, say NVIDIA on the hardware that you have. Okay. Also, a quick note as far as standard or legacy drivers versus their new DCHU drivers, you have to make sure that you install the correct version for your system. I think this was end of 2018 where this new driver standard came out. There's really no benefit between the two, but a legacy driver won't install on the newer platform and vice versa. So just make sure you're using the correct driver that came with the computer. I think the only way to change the driver type is to reinstall Windows, and then it's kind of dependent on the first driver that you install. So that might be another reason for installation failure. You might see a warning, something like that. And oftentimes, say from NVIDIA, you can go and get the other version driver for the same release. All right. Just the 3 different places to find the drivers. Again, on the left, you see the NVIDIA control panel. There you see the driver installed. Driver version is 441.66. On the top right, we have the system information. Click Display, and then we can see the driver version there. Really, we're looking at the last 5 digits of the driver version. So again, 441.66. And then finally, in the bottom right, we see SOLIDWORKS RX in the Diagnostics tab. It's listed there as well. So those are all 3 different ways of finding that information. And then a note on SOLIDWORKS RX, obviously it's good to run the diagnostics. It might tell you some other things, like maybe your computer hasn't been restarted in a month or 2. Maybe there's a Windows update, something like that could benefit or solve some of the issues. Okay. Again, we might need this information from you. We can always request your system information file. You can save it as a .nfo file and send it to us. Just click File, Save. In the top left there is system information. Then you can always create a new case by sending it to support@goengineer.com, and we can jump right on that for you. All right, we're going to finish it off with just some Windows settings, and finally just really brief on some SOLIDWORKS settings, because that is a pretty large subject in its own. All right. Kind of the four things we look at are obviously physical memory, right? So not much you can really do as far as tweaking those settings other than it just increasing the RAM. So just purchasing more RAM. Okay. If you're running 8, again, check that out. Check your task manager. Even 16 gigabytes might not be adequate for what you're doing. So it's pretty easy to look at that. The second is the virtual memory or the page file. The virtual, it's typically 1.5 to 2 times. This is managed by Windows, and you can manually up or increase that limit up to 2 times if you would like. But that SOLIDWORKS can benefit from larger virtual memory, obviously. The ways to get to that, it's pretty convoluted, but you can find it there just going through the control panel if you want to test increasing your virtual memory. All right, and the third thing here out of 4, we have just user objects. So when it comes to Windows, we have 2 objects. We have user and GDI objects. That you can also monitor these in your task manager. You'd have to add those 2 columns. But if you would like, if you're running out of resources or the computer thinks you're running out of resources, it has a limit. When it reaches that limit, it's going to give you a warning that it's running out of memory or system is running low, something like that. And you can always up those if you would like. And that's kind of a last resort. Obviously, doing virtual or physical memory might be quite a bit better options. But if you would like, we can help you increase those. That's done through the registry. We can increase the user object limit and the GDI object limit to hopefully avoid any warning messages or pop-ups that you're seeing to eliminate those. All right. The large assembly is kind of the main thing when it comes to SOLIDWORKS settings. Let me just throw all this up here. When it comes to SOLIDWORKS, there are obviously a lot of settings we can find in the system options. Many of those relate to large assemblies, or in this case, maybe large assembly drawings that are all those file references. That's the biggest impact that we pretty much see on performance. The cases that we see in tech support. There's a lot of things that you can do, and I would check out. We obviously have videos on our website or on our YouTube channel. One would be the large assembly best practices that Ami has done. Really kind of all-encompassing. It's like 40, over 40 minutes, and we go through a lot of settings in there and tips and tricks. Okay. One thing that I have to mention as far as performance goes, really some of the performance issues, slow performance opening, slow saving, has just to do with file storage. So is more better? Well, in this case, if you're working in the cloud or in the server, we see some instabilities, we see some issues with that from time to time, and then the answer would be no, we just need to try a different file storage method. Move your files locally or PDM. PDM automatically moves those files local for you, but that could have a huge benefit as far as performance goes. So yeah, that's another thing that we would check for if you reach out for us if you're noticing some issues. Obviously, maybe you're on a network server and then something has happened to your connection to your server. Maybe there's a new antivirus, something like that, new firewall. There's a lot of things that might be out of your control. So having those files directly on your computer, opening from your local drive, is going to be very much ideal. All right. So yeah, check out our YouTube channel, or just our website for more information on SolidWorks settings. Is really what I would have to say here. Primarily, I just wanted to focus today on just going through some of the hardware stuff, questions that we get the most often, and really harping on the video card driver. That's kind of one of the main things that we notice. If you want, send us an email. Like I said, support@goengineer.com. I'll try to respond to some of these questions as well with some additional information. but we're kind of always around, ready to help out at any time that you guys need it. So yeah, I think that about covers everything. I really appreciate all the questions. I think that these are the most questions that I've received in a single webinar, and they're all really good. So I hope I touched on kind of the some good stuff here. The last thing, obviously, like I said, mentioned, is just to check out our other videos. And I hope you found this webinar useful, and I hope we see you at the next one. Again, this is Ben Modic, and yeah, thank you for joining in.